It's an honor for me to be here too and have an opportunity to address you all on some of these points. I think in the case of Afghanistan, it probably is important to say why, in the middle of such racking problems that Afghanistan has been having on a military way with foreign exploitation, invasions, and all the rest, why, with the environmental problems that it faces, which I'll work over in a minute, why botanical gardens as such, which might seem to be a kind of a very specialized, peculiar sort of thing, would have an important place, or could or should have an important place. To talk about the challenges that faced Afghanistan, I think it's worth repeating them now because the Botanical Garden bears directly on these. The way that you use them and develop them will definitely affect these. Afghanistan is challenged for water. It's challenged by desertification. It's challenged by climate change. At the higher elevations, it's challenged by the harvesting of forest resources. Shrubs are being gathered. Dryland farming is being practiced in many unsuitable areas. And there are many, many kinds of challenges which have tended to be lost or confused during all of the military and political battles that have been ravaging the country so unfortunately for such a long period of time. But those environmental factors, those factors on which the lives of people ultimately depend, are of extreme fundamental importance for coming out of this period of militarism into a period of peace, which we all have to hope for. If we in the world don't find a way to love one another, appreciate one another, care for one another, and encourage one another, it's all over anyway. And this, it seems to me, is one way that we might be able to help do that. One of the challenges facing Afghanistan, which it's worth mentioning, is that the population of Afghanistan, which is now 38 million people, is projected to grow by about 1 million people a year to about 71 million people, nearly doubling in the next 30 years. And the resources in Afghanistan are deeply used, are dangerously used at the present time, especially in an era of climate change. And if one combines those two, one has a real problem. If the population is growing as it is growing by about 1 million people a year, what that means is that there is a very large, and you all know this, but it's important for our story, a very large population of young people, a growing population of young people in Afghanistan. And as all over the world, for sure, but certainly in a country with a population demography like Afghanistan, reaching and educating and enlisting those younger people in solving the problems of the future is probably the most important thing that can be done. World peace, we all will have to work for. Non-aggression, we all will have to work for. Appreciation, support, love, and charity towards one another we'll all hope for. But educating those young people and helping them to know why something like a botanical garden could be important and what it symbolizes is of great importance. Now, as Ari has already pointed out, botanical gardens started as adjuncts to medical schools. They started in the early 1400s in Europe in their modern form. And they started because plants were medicines in those days. There's still about well over half of our medicines worldwide come directly from plants or were first discovered in plants. But in those medical schools where gathering and understanding plants was the key to being able to cure anything or to do any good for anyone, it was logical to have botanical gardens as adjuncts. As time went by over the next 600 years, people began to view botanical gardens as the kinds of diverse collections that they are, as places for teaching about all aspects of plants in matters ranging from their beauty to their usefulness to their medicinal values, the whole works. And in doing that, they became kind of living museums of plants. They're analogous to zoos, but zoos are not deeply involved historically and currently with universities like botanical gardens are. They started separately from carnivals, and they're essentially show places of animals that, like botanical gardens, have taken over conservation goals in our time. A botanical garden associated with a university in Afghanistan can do a great deal. A network of botanical gardens in Afghanistan can do a great deal more. Teach young people about plants, can demonstrate the beauty of plants from an artistic point of view, can demonstrate the utility of plants from an agricultural and medicinal point of view, and in general can help people to appreciate the nature around them and to take care of it, can be an important lesson in helping people to understand why they would want to take care of it. While the population is growing rapidly, the demands are growing rapidly, and in what we all hope will be a stable Afghanistan, God help us achieve that together, will be of extreme importance in managing the assets of the country. Now, a network of botanical gardens is a good thing. They're about, for those of you who don't know, Afghanistan is about the size of France or Texas, but it's much more extreme physiographically. It ranges from about 250 meters elevation at the lowest point to over 7,500 meters at the highest point. So there are many, many different zones in it, and that's important in thinking about botanical gardens. The three gardens that we're thinking about now very well, suitably, and properly are associated with universities where they can do a lot of good for education at all levels, and where I hope they will be able to welcome the general public and where they'll have a solid rooting in those universities. But it is true that the three botanical gardens that we're talking about now only differ by about 800 meters in elevation and are to a certain extent in the same kind of vegetational zone in the country. In order to, there are about 4,000 kinds of plants found in Afghanistan. Probably about a quarter of them are found only in Afghanistan. A very good number of them are used medicinally. In order to preserve all of those, it will be necessary to think beyond the geographical placement of the three gardens that we're talking about now, each of them extraordinarily important as an axis in its own urban and university context, but think beyond that into the different kinds of habitats that occur around Afghanistan. Rapid deforestation in Afghanistan, mostly illegal, is destroying the remaining forests rapidly. The two UNEP reports, 2008, 2014 on Afghanistan, the latter a plan for the future of biodiversity there, make very definite recommendations about preserving lands. And those will be important to carry out no matter what happens about botanical gardens, which can nevertheless help to motivate people to want to preserve those lands. It will be necessary to do that, though, to save a good proportion of the plants in Afghanistan. And then the final thing that I want to bring out is that plants have an advantage over other kinds of organisms in conservation, in that they can be saved in seed banks at cold temperatures or freezing temperatures. The seeds or tissue culture can be saved. A lot of genetic diversity can be saved in a very small area. And there was at least one abortive attempt to start a seed bank in Afghanistan, which unfortunately was destroyed as a side product of some of the warlike or battling activities in the country. But these gardens and the motivation that led to them should definitely be thinking of seed banks, tissue culture centers, and preserving their plants that way, as well as in gardens. Obviously, 4,000 species of plants growing all over the huge habitat diversity of Afghanistan will not be hardy in one of those three gardens at middle elevations in the country. Uh, and so seed banks will be necessary. And to some extent, in order to manage them, it will be necessary to see where they are, whether they're in gardens or not, where they are in the wild, how likely they are to become extinct, and how they can be used in revegetating, stabilizing the country, and bringing it back to sustainability. We all pray for political sustainability in Afghanistan. We all pray for peace for the people of this great country with its abundant centuries old history. And when that comes, we need also to create an environmentally sustainable country. And we need to help the Afghanis in doing that for themselves. Building botanical gardens symbolizes for me in a unique and very wonderful way our commitment to helping build back towards sustainability, save the elements for restoring sustainability in the future, and giving the people something simple to work for, to build, to work for, and to enjoy that will be a good companion along the way. Thank you.